Hi, I'm Catherine Morgan from Point A to Point B Transitions, and this is Evolving Working, where we talk about the way work needs to evolve so that it works better for everybody. Because guess what? One size never did fit all. My co-host and partner in crime is Susan Eckstein.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm Susan Eckstein. I am an empowerment expert. I'm a keynote speaker, facilitator, and coach. And in a nutshell, I help high-achieving women own their personal power so they can stop shrinking and have the confidence to be seen, be heard, and take up space.
And today we're joined by our dear friend and colleague, Angie Rome Gonzalez. Angie works with me at Point A to Point B Transitions, helping our amazing clients get great results, find a career and job that fits their life. Tell us a little bit about your background, Angie.
I'm a certified life coach. I worked at Coaches Training Institute in California. And while I was there, fell in love with the idea of coaching and therefore went through their training. And I have been coaching now probably about 15 years, 16 years actually to the day. Moved to Texas in 2006 and have integrated my coaching with other fields that I've been involved in, using it to help coworkers to find their purpose and a meaning to their jobs. And I work primarily with one-on-one clients to mine for their values, identify their limiting beliefs and their the voices in their head that like to sabotage them, and get all of that stuff in a stew that they can then refer to and help them make change and transition in their lives.
Well, there's nothing like career transition and the financial insecurity that brings to have all your little demons come up and make themselves heard. I know that you've coached a lot on beliefs as well, Susan. How do you see that show up for people, limiting beliefs and self-sabotage?
Oh, all the time, all the time. And in the work that I do, often what I'll see is people will be aware that they're not showing up in a way that they want to show up, that's in line with what they claim their values are, but they're not quite sure what's causing them to be out of alignment with that. So like what Angie said, it's like mining for all that information and then laying it all out and then unpacking it and then having someone go, oh, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then being willing to say, okay, this belief isn't working for me. I need to shift out of that and I want to believe this. And then how do we make that happen, integrate that, the behaviors that support that belief, all of that stuff. And it's really fun work when someone's willing to actually lay everything out on the table and be willing to explore.
I love the term mining for beliefs. I thought I saw somebody, sort of taking their pickaxe and looking for jewels and gems. How do you go about walking a client through mining for their beliefs, Angie?
Well, a lot of times I find myself just listening to the things that show up. I do ask some pointed questions. Often I'll say, tell me about a time where you were really happy, or what's your best memory from your childhood, or I guess those are two main ones that I use. But in those stories, the things that matter most to people just show up, just miraculously show up. And I think that a lot of people are very clear what some of their core values are, but they're not even aware of that. They can't name them. They wouldn't be able to point them out, but they live when they make decisions correctly for themselves, it's because they're doing it from their value system. I do have a couple of other tools that I use to help mine for values. When I do an intake with a client, I often use a value exercise where I send them a sheet that has, 150 values on it. And I say, circle as many of these as you feel are your values. And then what we do in the first session is we sort of chunk those values down into a list of 4 or 5, what we call core values. And then everything sort of fits under one of those umbrella values. There's books that you can use. As a matter of fact, I still to this day use a book that I was introduced to by my mom, who was a middle school guidance counselor, and she used it in the 70s, called Values Clarification. It's by Sydney Simon, and it still exists. You can still get that book. It's been through, I don't know, 4 or 5 different versions, but it's just a series of questions that you ask yourself that basically reveal your values, because you have your values. They are part of you. They come from outside your social, outside interactions, but they also come from just naturally who you are, in your attitudes and your beliefs and your family and all of the things that make you who you are. Your values grow from that.
I'll bet it's easier for people to see what their values are when something goes against them. When they push against values, or somebody behaves in a way that is antagonistic to someone's core values, I'll bet they can point that out immediately. Not that, I don't do that, I believe this.
Absolutely. And I also know that in the workplace, that your personal values, if they're in alignment with the values of the company, it's great. When they're not, it is not great.
Let me walk you through some examples about how that can happen. If you're the type of person who believes in building a deep relationship with your customer and really exceeding expectations in customer service and the lifetime value of a customer, and you go to a company that has more of a transactional business model, meaning they're always bringing in new customers and don't really care whether customers stick around, that may feel like it's super uncomfortable for you and against your values, but it's just a different business model that doesn't fit the way that you like to do business. Nothing wrong with it. They're not cheating customers or doing something that's unethical. It's just not in alignment with your values and how you like to do business.
I think the word alignment is the key here. We can work in companies that don't have our value system, are necessarily the same exact values as we do. But if you can find alignment with something in their value system, it becomes just a lot more delicious to work at that company. For example, I do have a very, very strong value around customer service, around service in general, and communication and connection. And I went to work for a financial services firm that was about making quotas and making as many phone calls as you could possibly make in order to set appointments. And I don't work very well that way. It was difficult for me to ever meet my quotas. And on that side, I was considered a failure. I never met my quotas. But on the other side, I was building relationships with the customers and the potential people who were going to sign with us, to the point that people would ask for me when they would call, or I would build the relationships so strongly that they became lifetime customers to this company. So on that side, I was incredibly powerfully successful. And I could wrap myself around that. That company and I had to part ways because of that exact difference. You know, it was just not a fit. I learned a ton at that job, though, about what are my values? How do I honor those values? If someone around me is not honoring the values that I value, how do I be with that? Because you're not going to change other people's values. So you have to learn to either be with it and be okay with it, or even find places where you can align with some of their values, because we all have many, many values that all, and no one that you meet is going to have no values in common with you. There's always something there.
See, you're a natural connector. Susan, you've done some training that's actually clear beliefs training, right?
Yes, and that's around helping you identify what beliefs are holding you back and what beliefs you would like to step into. And we all have the ability to change what we believe, even though for most of us, like Angie's talking about, you know, our core values, our core beliefs, which we, you know, have had the entire, you know, most of our lives that were created when we were little, that we took on as our own. You know, there's so much resistance because if you've been operating under a certain belief system, that is the lens through which you see the world. It may not be what's actually happening in the world, but what you believe is going to determine what it is that you see and what's going on. And so people who tend to share the same values or the same belief systems tend to see things in the same way. And I love what Angie said, that you can have people who see things differently, who might have different values, but being able to find things where you share common ground, where your values might be aligned in order to work with this person, have a better relationship with this person. I think that is a great way to operate, as long as you are clear on what your values are. And I think, Angie, I agree with you. I use some of the assessment tools that you were talking about earlier, because we live our values, but oftentimes people can't define it. You know, one of my values is empowerment, and you might be able to see that in the words that I choose or my actions, or when I'm having a conversation with somebody else, but I might not define saying, you know, empowerment is one of my core values. And I think for a lot of people, they don't name them. So having a list and being able to circle and then identify, okay, what really resonates with you? You know, love, communication, connection, empowerment, empathy, whatever it is for you. And then being able to see, okay, these are my values. Where am I aligned with my beliefs there? And where am I struggling? One of the things that I often see with people, with women, they might say, well, of course I believe that I deserve to be in a room. I'm empowered. I feel like I'm confident, but yet their actions, the way that they are showing up is not aligned with that. So, okay, well, let's dig in there. There's going to be a belief in there that we need to now unpack it and say, okay, are you willing to let it go? How are we going to let that go? And what do you want to step into? It's a real fascinating process to have somebody trust you to actually go through that and lay everything out on the table and see how people want to change and actually live from their values all the time, which is not always an easy thing to do at all.
Not at all. Angie, you've done some work with our clients about helping them work through some limiting beliefs and some stories from the past that are holding us back. What would you like to share about that?
A lot of things show up when you are talking to someone and being a coach to them. A lot of negative things and a lot of positive things. And it's a dance, basically. You are listening in a way that is unlike most of us listen. Most of us listen, we hear surface things. We hear level 1 listening, and we sometimes hear level 2 listening, which is a little deeper, but that deepest listening, that level 3 listening, you have to train to do that. It's something that's just not natural for us. And so in the listening, you're hearing, obviously, all of the limiting beliefs that show up. You're hearing what those core values are. You're hearing what the baggage is from the past, and you're hearing those saboteur voices come up, and many, many more things show up. And then it's a matter of sort of dancing with what shows up. What I often do with clients, and specifically the clients who are going through these transitions in their lives right now, and sort of trying to dance in this moment with what is work, and how do I want to work, and who do I want to work with, all of those questions that we have. I'm specifically working with them to be able to speak out loud what those things are, to be able to identify when their values are not being honored, when their mission or their goals or whatever it is that they're dreaming of and want to be able to define that, so that we can start navigating a path toward that. One of the biggest lessons that I teach my clients, and I find that it's especially hard with women, is when should I say yes and when should I say no? So it becomes this lesson about asking yourself that main question, which is saying yes to this in alignment with my values? Is saying yes to this in alignment with my passion? Is saying yes to this going to serve me? So then if the answer is no, it's very easy to say no, but we don't say no very easily. Women.
I always joke that coaches, our only job is to give out permission slips. Okay, you now have, right?
Yes.
100%. Right.
We have permission. You have permission to quit that job. You have permission to decline that job offer. You have permission to go in and ask for 10,000 more. You have permission to tell that coworker that's not okay. Like, I swear that's most of what we do. I should have one to print that I can just hand a permission slip.
Yeah, I mean, you have permission to change your beliefs. You have a permission to think differently about this, right? Just because this is the way you've always thought, and it's holding you back, but your mom told you this is how you're supposed to think and behave, but that's not serving you. And it's like hitting up against a barrier. And if you're willing to say, oh, it's okay that I can think differently about this, the barrier goes away. But we're so afraid, many of us are so afraid to do that, because you're going against what somebody that you loved or respected told you. This is how you have to believe, how you have to think about this. And you're right. We're here to say you have permission to look at this completely in a different way.
Or you have permission to want what you want. You've been doing what you've been doing for 20 years. You're over it. You want to do something else. Angie spent a ton of time in arts management, and she's thinking, I don't really want to do arts management anymore. I want to try something else. Permission slip to walk away from something that's the logical step would be like, well, I have this background in arts management. I'll do something in arts management. But if you're over it, you're over it. Let's tie this back back to values again, because companies, especially employers of choice or companies who are B Corps or nonprofits or mission-driven corporate entities, are leading with corporate values these days, and explicitly in the interview process are asking clients to talk about their values and how the candidate's values tie back to the organizational values. I have had people in job search have to do 5 to 15-minute presentations on their personal values and how the values tie to the organization. What advice would you give people in this situation? Either of you.
I would suggest doing the research. A lot of these companies actually advertise their values on their websites.
Mhm.
And that was a surprise to me. I was like, oh, look, there's values. And I always use that in my cover letter when I'm applying for a job. I say, I saw on your website that you have values around, and I name them. And I say, I really align with this. This is also a huge value of mine. A lot of companies use the word integrity, and that is a large, large value for me, probably one of my core values. And so if a company says that they have integrity or they value integrity, and I know I value integrity, I then do a little deeper research and I try to find out, are they really integrous? Is this company really following that value? So it's just a sort of a deeper quest to understand how they're honoring their values. And also then I have to do the work on myself to say, today, how am I honoring my values? Because that changes. You know, I'll have a day where I'm just completely not honoring a value of beauty, and my house is a mess, right? A value of, yes.
It's generally not a good day, by the way. When you're out of alignment with your values, you're probably not your best self that day. What would you add to this, Susan, before I kind of wrap it up?
I was recently having in an interview conversation, and like Angie said, this company listed its values, the 7 core values that it had, and they flat out asked, of our values, which are the top 3 for you? And so had I not gone online and really looked and did some exploration and research on who they are and the kind of service they provide and the kind of employees that they have and all of that, I would not have known how to answer. But one of the things that drew me to the organization was the list of the values. All 7 of those values were very important to me. So making sure that when you are, you know, doing your research, like Angie said, that you look for that, because that, you know, that question is going to come up. It may not come up in the first interview with HR, but it may come up down the road. You know, what are your values and how do your values align with ours? And I agree, like Angie said, around integrity. If integrity is one of your core values and that's not clear on the website and the other communication that the organization is putting out, then that should be a red flag for you. You want to make sure that where you're going to work and the people that you're going to work with share the same values as you. It's very important. You're going to be happier working with people who all believe the same things that you believe around how it's important to show up and what's important to you.
I worked for 2 companies that, looking at their websites, were virtually identical. Both offered the exact same services, similar size. Literally, you could have subbed in the logo of one to the other, more or less the same. I used to think that this values stuff was sort of squishy, and HR and marketing conspired to come up with something that, you know, more or less worked on the website. But what I found from personal experience is working at one company, not a fit for the way I like to work or the way I like colleagues to treat each other. The other company, the best company I ever worked for in my 30-year career. So I'm going to say values are super important. Know yours, know what drives you, and find a company where the people there more or less have similar values, more or less do business the way you like to do business. And that is what leads to a happy work experience, more than money, more than anything else. Like, they have to meet your money. Like, yes, you deserve to get paid. I'm not saying that, but after your money's met, it's about, do you more or less vibe with the people you work with? Do they more or less treat each other the way you think people should treat each other? Do they more or less treat their clients the way they should treat each other, clients? That makes for a happy work experience. And if you're not happy, welcome to the great reshuffling and the great resignation. But so definitely follow your values for, happier work. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you, Angie, for sharing your wisdom. It's a joy to spend some time on video with you and to work with you personally.